Get his presentation ready.
Thank you. Oh, I'll get to use this. Okay. Oh, all right. Thanks, mate. Thank you. We've got to have a G present, have we? No? Left the building. Hang on. I'll have a look. That's okay. We've got it. That's okay, we're right. So, can you get that on? It's okay, Abhijit. See how critical it is to everything that we do? Thank you. Yeah, thanks Suzanne and thanks Seren. As always, Seren always sets the scene for us at Sumo and Austin Brothers. So what I'll be talking about tonight is really about a little bit more about the opportunities in Australia, but also more specifically talking about a number of projects that we've sourced that we believe will interest you very much, hopefully. So with that in mind, just reiterating a little more in respect of what Seren covered. Obviously in Australia we have a fairly stable government. Not everyone agrees with the politics, I guess, looking at my erstwhile companion over here, with the Liberals in charge at the moment. But ostensibly it's a stable government environment. We don't have coups, we don't have any governments being overthrown. Also in terms of the assets that we have available in Australia in terms of real estate, we have a really high level of industrial, retail, commercial grade properties, and also we'll obviously be talking about residential, which is near and dear to our hearts. In terms of GDP, Seren highlighted the 2.7% growth in 2014, and the expectation is it'll be at 2.75% in 2015. Probably underpinned mainly with the drop in interest rates and also household spending. So we tend to spend a lot of money in Australia on household goods, and also we buy a lot of property. So we're certainly keeping the economy buoyant. The other thing that is really in the forefront of government thinking at the moment is the development of infrastructure in Australia. So there's a lot of projects on the drawing board at the moment in terms of roads, ports. There's a port going into Hastings, which is one of our coastal towns in Victoria, spend of $15 billion, and also second airport in Sydney and Perth. So they're just a couple of examples of what's going on at the moment in terms of projects. The workforce itself tends to be highly skilled overall. There's obviously an emphasis on study and being better skilled. So people in the older age groups, such as myself even, people coming out of employment tend to then need to be upskilled into an area that they can gain further employment. But also the youth are encouraged obviously to keep studying for as long as they can. The Australian government does encourage offshore buyers. So we have the Foreign Investment Review Board has legislation in place and regulations which will be touched on a little later. And there's a variety of visas that people can aspire to achieving. The other thing that Seren covered on across the world was on the basis of how Australia compares to the world, and in particular, I guess if you're looking at Asia, how we compare to Asia, and we compare very favourably. You've seen that Australia itself has been preeminent in terms of livability and so on. So across every factor, we tend to be right up in the forefront. So some of the other advantages I guess I should touch on. One is the free medical under Medicare, which is a process that's in place across Australia. Free education for primary and secondary school students, so parents don't have to try and find the money to educate their kids. And also heavily subsidised university fees. We do have a lot of full fee paying students coming from overseas, and we do have a lot of Indian students actually in Australia, particularly in Melbourne, where Suzanne and I come from. So we do see a lot of Indian folk and young Indians in Melbourne, and they tend to be in all our universities. So the lifestyle, Suren showed a picture of the lovely beaches that we have, and the lifestyle itself. I think anyone who's visited Australia would say that you've got a wide range of opportunities to partake of different lifestyle choices. Also, the weather itself, we don't have extremes of weather. Particularly in Melbourne, we tend to have 4 seasons in one day. In Sydney, it's a very temperate climate. You get up into more slightly tropical in Brisbane, and then further north in the Great Barrier Reef, you've obviously got a tropical sort of environment with high humidity. So Suren mentioned before too about how many times would India fit into Australia, and you look at it and you say, well, really, we do have a very low population to the size of the country that we live in. And I did mention about the government encouraging immigration, and really that's going on at a pace at the moment through China, but also Sumo Austin Brothers would like to offer the opportunity for the qualified people to look at that as a possibility, perhaps for yourselves. And employment opportunities are there for qualified people, there's no doubt. We are running currently at about 6.1% unemployment. But across the board, if you are suitably qualified and you have the right experience, generally you'll be able to get a role. The low interest rate environment and low inflation rates really are making it easier for people to purchase property and also to buy goods at a reasonable rate. So currently the inflation rate, I know in Victoria is 1.4, across the board it's a bit over 2. So again, it's not rampant inflation, money's actually worth something. The average wage in Australia is about 78,000 AUD. So if you multiply that by 50.99, based on the current currency exchange, you come up with rupees. Okay. The last point here is the wide choice of housing. So what's happening at the moment is that there's a movement towards apartment dwellings and also house land packages in areas that are suitable for people where they can be employed. But higher density living. There's a lot of people actually, they might have a big backyard, so they'll actually do a development where they'll put 2 townhouses, for instance, or just keep the main house and put another dwelling at the rear. So there's a lot of that going on. And that strikes a chord, doesn't it, Susie? So wide choice of housing. So if you look at Melbourne, it's the fastest growing city in Australia. Actually, it's probably quite surprising. Most people think of Sydney as the fastest growing, but in fact Melbourne is. So last year there were 42,000 new immigrants, if you want to call it that, into Melbourne. That compares with about 29,000 in Sydney. By 2030, it's predicted that Melbourne will actually outstrip Sydney in terms of population, which is a pretty scary thought for those in Sydney. Not really. Okay. The growth pattern is expected to continue, there's no doubt, and high number of jobs available in Melbourne than elsewhere. So we're getting not only immigrants coming in from overseas, but we're also getting people from other states coming into Melbourne looking for work and seeing the opportunities. And housing is overall 20 to 25% more affordable than Sydney. However, Sydney last year had a higher growth rate than Melbourne, substantially, but that's expected to moderate in 2015. So there's the yin and the yang between the two cities. Foreign buyers again make up, gee, I might even get to use this pointer, how's that? 32.5% of the total purchases in Melbourne. So that's a heck of a lot. We're getting a lot of people coming in from China in particular, they're buying. So if you look at the house price indices, and I know you probably put this up before, Suren, but on the average of the Australian capital cities, you can see that Melbourne's going at a reasonably high pace. So what I'd like to do now is to give you an insight into two particular projects that Sumo have actually asked us to view. And the first one is Central 35. This is a project that is within 6 k's of the CBD of Melbourne, north of Melbourne. And it's in a place called Moonee Ponds. So the project itself is in an area that's easily accessible from the CBD. It has trams and train within 100 metres each way, if you like, walking one way to the train and to the tram 100 metres the other way from the project itself. It's in an enclave of shops, restaurants, wine bars, got everything there. Large scale shopping. And you can see there the bus terminus also is within, 2-minute walk. Anyone likes the races, it's close to the Moonee Valley Racecourse, so they have harness racing, and also it's close to the Melbourne, to Flemington, which runs the Melbourne Cup each year. So you probably stop during the race as well, like everyone else in the world, I guess. But it's in a great locale, so it's within very easy reach of everything that you need to worry about. And I'll show some pictorials of the actual area itself, so we'll keep moving along. So the development itself, you can see there, it's a 13-level apartment building. It's got what we consider to be an architecturally well-designed edifice, and it consists of 68 apartments with a floor of penthouses. There's also shops on the bottom. It's not working now, of course, over here. And there's a mixture of 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. We'll talk about the price ranges shortly. So that gives you a bit of an idea of the front. The locale itself, I mentioned, that's where it is here. You've got Flemington Racecourse there, and you've got the CBD down here, and you've got Moonee Valley Racecourse there, and then if we go out this way, it goes to Tullamarine Freeway. So from there, it's probably about a 15-minute drive to the airport and about 15 minutes the other way to the city. If you catch a train or a tram, that's on a train it'll be even less. Okay. Just to give you a bit of an idea, probably not so interested in the shops unless we have some people that run commercial around here. What we do have is a mixture here of 1 bedrooms, there, and there. You've got a 2-bedroom there, and then you've got 2s here. So that's a typical sort of floor plate until you get up to the 13th level. Just to give you a bit of an idea without dwelling on it, but for anyone who's interested to chat to Suzanne and I or any of the other guys about the project, we can give you a full insight into all of the floor plans available. Just gives you an idea again of how they look. Okay, so the actual pricing itself, if you look at that, 380 to 450 for a 1-bedroom with obviously 1 bathroom. And the rentals are exceedingly good. 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom from 500k, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom from 680, and 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom from 720. And Mahul will be covering aspects of the actual financing and how, obviously, if you're getting that sort of rental return, how that actually works for you. So the basic demographics of the area are, in fact, 7% increase in population per annum into the area. So you've got 13,500 people. The major age group represented is, in fact, a fairly young age group, 25 to 34, and they tend to be young professional people. And people that we've been speaking to that are really keen on this particular project are, in fact, young professionals looking for investment or to live in themselves. In fact, Suzanne's bought one of these for her own daughter, who hopefully will be getting through law in the next 12 months or so. Make it, oh, whatever. Well, 4 years more, is it? That's the average price of a house in Moonee Ponds, and that's an average price of a unit. Now, bearing in mind that there's a lot of older style units in Moonee Ponds. It's a very well established suburb. So what's happening is this is one of the few new to be established apartment buildings going into the area. So the actual average price, if you like, or the value of units is quite low compared to obviously newer stock becoming available in the area. So it's skewed it somewhat. And the average growth rate in the past 10 years has been 4.63%, which is healthy. This gives you a bit of a streetscape of the area. It's fantastic. We've taken a number of clients over there, and they just wax lyrical about how nice it is. You know, we go into the wine bar over there, and being a non-drinker, it's not the best place for me, but Suzanne makes up for it. And oh, ha, ha, ha. Okay, it is true. Mahul can attest to it. And then this is a typical streetscape, actually in one street away from where the project is. So this is called Puckle Street, and it has a wide range of retail. Got all not the big brands. It hasn't got the prestige brands, but Suzanne assures me that it covers off on the mid-range brands quite well. And that's just another one. So we do have Witchery, which I don't know whether you have that Witchery in India, but it's not a bad place to buy clothes. And the Queen's Park is only probably 200 metres from this particular project, and that's typical of what you experience when you go for a walk in the area. It's not bad. Not quite what I saw in South Mumbai the other day. Okay, so that's the view. Now you'll tell me, Suzanne, because Suzanne went up in the cherry picker to do the photos. So what floor is this? This is the 6th floor, looking towards the CBD. And there's